we all have community service. So, Mr. Tom Pike, give a big hand to Mr. Tom Pike, because you know, he was served to what's happening in the campaign. So, Mr. Tom Pike, it's all yours.
Everybody, I'm Tom Pike. I'm a volunteer, proud of that. I think no matter what you thought of the results of the election, we're relieved that elections are over. And previously the candidates looked at us as voters. Now the citizens are constituents of these elected representatives. Today, we start our relationship with our new Congressman from Khanna. I'm just going to run through real quick some of the ground rules of what we're doing. We're going to have both live questions and card questions. Everybody, we can listen up. It's not up? Okay. I'll get it. There we go. Okay. So we're going to have, you can write down questions on cards. If you have card questions that you've written down, you can give them to the volunteers, some questions, they're raising their hands, or give it to me. What we're going to do first is have live questions until about 2 o'clock. We're going to have a microphone. I think we're going to have it managed back here. You can ask your question back here live. Ro will be responding. And then around 2, we're going to go to the written questions, because what we can do is fill in some issues that haven't been presented live, because we might just say be front-loaded with live questions. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to ask different issues and so on. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our new congressman from the Congressional District 17, Ro Khanna. Thank you.
Such a large turnout. I know we had a little bit of thank you event for some volunteers, and some of you have stayed, and some of you folks. I apologize that we don't have enough seats. I think if there's a seat open next to you, why don't you raise your hand? So some people want to try to get seats. If they're, if you want to stand, you can, but especially. I wanted to, we don't have our team together yet. I won the election, and I was telling folks it was in orientation for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, and then we go for another week of orientation, and just this month I'm going to start hiring our team, our district team, our the team in DC. So this was logistically difficult to organize, but it was very important to me, especially given the national election, that we that I start to hear the opinions of our community, that I share what I have been hearing in Washington, because we're in a time where of extraordinary anxiety in the nation. And so I wanted to do this before the holidays. Once we get up and running, we're going to be much more even organized about doing these and looking at the RSVPs, and if we have an overflow crowd, maybe we'll split it up into 2 different sessions. The one thing I hope you'll just keep in mind, I told technically the guidelines, if you have more than 100 people, you need to have security and the Capitol Police. We haven't done that. It's because I told people we have the politest district. You can ask me as tough a question as you want. Just please be polite of each other and respectful, as I'm sure we will be. But please feel free to be as candid and open. This is really your time. So with that, who's going to start us off and ask the first question?
Okay, hang on. I will continue with what we started, if that's okay. You first, second, okay, go ahead and start the line.
Do we have a walk mic or a mic that we can use?
Yes, we have one that
Yeah, should we do that? Sure. This way it'll be easier. Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so Evelyn's gonna, okay. So Evelyn's going to bring the mic to, go ahead and have a seat. Okay, Tom says he wants a line, so it'd be a lot easier to manage.
I think we can just walk through people because it's going to be otherwise crowded to get the...
You never know, he might be the next president, so we have to follow his orders.
Hi. Okay.
Hi, Evelyn.
Hi.
Now you're gonna make people think you're biased and asking a question. You're giving me a hug, huh?
We're ready. This works.
Okay, congratulations, Rose. So, given that like Honda did not do much, actually nothing in the last 16 years, do you have a sense of urgency of doing some catch-up work for Silicon Valley? And some newspapers say that you have enough credit for credentials to be more active than a typical freshman congressman. Do you plan to be a little bit more active than average freshman? Thank you.
Look, I appreciated the question. Let me say this, that the campaign is over and there's no doubt that Mike Khanna and I had our differences. But I do want to put his career in perspective. He dedicated 35 years of his life to public service. He overcame the internment and stood up for civil liberties and human rights at a time that the country needs his voice. He's been very gracious in the transition, and I think it's time for our country to come together, and we need to be one district in this community, and I'm going to work with him going forward. I do think the place where I can show leadership is this sense that we were talking earlier about a country that is so divided on geography and place. And when you go to parts of our country, they don't see the opportunity to work in technology and the innovation economy. They are concerned that our jobs have been automated, that our jobs are going offshore. I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I know some of how they view life. And we have to do a better job for our district and for the country in making sure people have a pathway to the jobs of the future. One of the places I disagree with the president is he's saying, I'm going to bring the jobs of the past back. I think that's not realistic 10, 15 years from now. What we have to do is say, these are the jobs of the future, and we're going to prepare people to be part of those jobs. And that is the message that our district really needs to lead on, and that I'm going to be working on in the first 100 days and be very active on.
If you could state your name and the city you're from, that would be.
Christine Clifford, I'm from San Jose. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In speaking about disenfranchised populations, I'd like to take the opportunity to ask you a little bit about movement has been good in our nation towards moving towards the ending of mass incarceration and working towards changes in our justice system and our penal system. I'm afraid with the incoming tenure of the administration that there's going to be a movement backwards and moving more towards punitive measures rather than rehabilitative ones that help push us more towards ending recidivism. And we incarcerate far more than most of the world does, and I'd just like your thoughts on that.
Well, Christine, I appreciate it. I know we had met, and it's something that you are passionate about, and I'll look forward to your counsel and ideas on that. But we know that spending money on putting people in prison is a worse investment than spending money on educating them, on giving them opportunities. We know that it splits up families. It makes it tougher to be good parents, and there's a punitive sense of it. I think Cory Booker and Rand Paul in the Senate have done a lot of good work on a bipartisan basis to reform some of the criminal justice system. Kamala Harris, our senator, has talked about some of the important reforms. I don't think this is something that one person is going to solve, but if there are 15, 20 of us in the Congress and Senate on a bipartisan basis talking about changing this, then I think it's something that can get done. And it's certainly an issue I'm committed to working on, and I look forward to your advice on it.
Ro, congratulations. My name is Nassim Nouri. I'm from Push for Progress, live in San Jose. I'm thrilled that you represent us. You are the best listener among many politicians, I think. And one of the questions I had for you was, I know that you just stated one criticism you have of President Obama's position. How do you stand with the Dakota Access Pipeline and the grip of oil industry on our EPA and environmental laws that are now threatened under a Trump presidency to even become weaker?
Well, thank you for your leadership in the Bernie campaign and progressive movement. I was made, and don't applaud because this is just signing up and volunteering, but I was signed up and volunteered to be a vice chair of the Progressive Caucus, and my liaison is to Native Americans. So I will be playing a very leadership role in Congress on this issue and making sure that we oppose strongly the pipeline. And I didn't want to go, Ash Kalra, actually the assembly members actually went out there these last month. Tulsi Gabbard is out there. And once I get situated, I'll be talking to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to try to build support for the protesters, to criticize some of the excessive response of the state government. There are two issues. There's the pipeline, which shouldn't be built, and then there's the state excessive use of force against some of the protesters. And I will be a very strong voice on that. I look forward to people who care about those issues to contact me. I've been fortunate to be in a leadership role in the Progressive Caucus with an outreach to the Native American community to be able to play that voice. Thanks.
We're taking 3 questions from the back.
Hi, Congressman Khanna. Congratulations. I'm Yolanda. You're coming from Sunnyvale. Today I'm representing our airplane noise group to ask you about if you can do anything about this issue. We know that you have a lot of important things at the national level, and in the coming 3 months you have a pretty heavy schedule. So I wonder if you really have any energy left to take care of the regional issue. And if you don't, who are you going to assign to work and help us in this particular problem that's being very troublesome to the residents living under the flight path? Thank you.
I appreciate that. Well, my first job is to help the community that elected me to be there. So yes, I have to be a strong voice in the country and stand up for our values, but I plan to be home at least 3 weekends a month. I plan to be very engaged in the local issues. I had met with, or I think it was a WeChat with folks on the Sunnyvale airplane noise issue before the campaign. I committed to them that within the first a month or 2 I would get up to speed. All I ask, I just need patience till January 10th. Till January, I got to get my staff. The reason being, if I start to engage now in a disorganized way, until I'm my district director and until I have the district staff and the chief of staff, it's not going to be as effective. I plan to hire the chief of staff and the DC staff in December. I plan to have my district staff ready to go by about January 3rd is when I'm sworn in. January 10th, we should be fully operational as an office. And I'm happy then that second week of January to sit down with a group. I've already reached out to Glenn Hendricks, the mayor of Sunnyvale, and others to see what the solution should be. This is an area also that Honda's office was engaged, Anna Ashu's office has been engaged, Jimmy Panetta and Zoe Lufkin have been engaged. So we need to figure out what we can do collectively to talk to the FAA and make sure that there's some flexibility on the flight paths and that they're not going over areas that are residential, and have all 4 of the congresspeople working in concert, because you don't want Anna saying one thing and me saying one thing and Zoe saying another thing and Jimmy Panetta saying another thing. So let me, if you want to meet with the group, if they'd be willing, let's schedule that for early January. And then I will make sure that I talk to Anna Ashu and Zoe Lufkin and Jimmy Panetta about that. One thing you should know is that I have found in Congress to be a great thing is the California delegation is very unified. We meet, all the California delegation, the Democrats at least meet for lunch every Wednesday. We often have regional meetings, and so it's very easy to go meet with the other members of Congress to make sure everyone's working in the same direction. Thank you.
Hello, Congressman.
Hi, how are you? Row, please.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions. It's not questions. Which committees you are going to be on? Then the second one is about Muslim registry. What are you going to do about it? And about Syria, the devastating situation in Syria, how are you going to help? Thank you so much. Congratulations again. My name is Malika Khan.
I know, Mom.
I'm from San Jose.
Thank you, Malika. Well, with the Muslim registry, it's very simple. I'm going to oppose it with every fiber of my being. I think that is about as unconstitutional, un-American, unpatriotic act as I could imagine anyone taking. And if anything like that were to happen, that would become my first and highest priority, to resist anything that undermines our basic American values. And I hope all of us here in this room will join in that, because that threatens the very fabric of who we are as Americans. The question about committee assignments, which is much less consequential in terms of matters, but you know, it's sort of like asking someone who's applying to college, where do you want to go to college, before they've gotten admitted. So, you know, I've given my preferences to have an impact on economic policy and to have an impact on foreign policy. There are a number of committees that have that jurisdiction, and I'm hopeful that I'll get that assignment. They make them public end of December to early January, and I'll let you know as soon as I get them. And the third question was about Syria. You know, it is one of the most challenging situations, because the killings in Aleppo, the human rights violations are awful, and yet we don't want to have further intervention or ground troops or American engagement. And so I think there has to be a continued push towards some diplomatic solution with the regional players that helps bring some ceasefire and peace without committing American troops and further American entanglement in the Middle East. But it's an issue that certainly I will dive deeper in once in Congress, and really try to reflect our district's perspective on it and inform you regularly about what people are thinking.
Steve Siddell, City of Milpitas. Congratulations on your election. Quick question for you. Would you be willing to have yourself or one of your staff members work with people to approach the shareholders of Republic Services to direct the board and ultimately direct the C-level of Republic Services to close out New Island? The largest single shareholder of Republic Services, with over 104 million shares, that's over 30%, is Cascade Underwriters LCC, wholly owned by Bill Gates. Bill and Melinda Gates are great friends of the environment, and shareholders can in fact direct their corporations to do good common sense things. So I would like to ask you to at least consider that. And then the second question, in a few days I'll be 71 years old, so I'm greatly concerned about increases in Social Security, because what they're raising versus what I'm paying just doesn't make sense.
I appreciate that, Steve. Well, you know, I've expressed time and again my concern with Newbie Island, with the expansion. You know, my wife and I have a condo in Fremont. It's an issue that affects us. It's not theoretical. Anytime you go on Dixon Landing, near Dixon Landing, you smell the odor. I think at the very least they need to shut down the compost facility, other things that they haven't done. When you're a member of Congress, one thing I realize is you start getting your phone calls returned. I don't know if Bill Gates is going to return my phone call, though that may be a step too much. But I'm happy to try to reach out to write a letter to him or to others to see if we can get it in people's attention. I definitely do think that we need Republic to take some constructive steps to deal with that. And on Social Security, obviously I'm steadfast committed to making sure that the benefits are there, that they increase with the cost of living. We are already at a very big disadvantage, our seniors here, because we're living in a very high cost of living, and we don't get benefits that really reflect the cost of living of this area. And I think that one of the most foolish things that the president or the Republicans could do to agree to try to cut or reduce any of the Social Security. I will, as will the entire California delegation in the Bay Area, I can safely say, speak strongly and do all we can to make sure that that is not cut, because that was the basic compact that our country made with our seniors.
Thank you.
Bro, my name is Jim Ballison. I'm from Santa Clara. I voted for you this time and last time.
Appreciate that.
I supported you. I was a bit disappointed, though, that in the last, I don't know, maybe it was 10 days, I got a piece of mail that was really derisive of my conduct. And it's the only piece that I saw. And I was under the impression that you weren't going to do that. And I just wondered, quite frankly, did the numbers show that if you didn't go negative, you might not win? Or what prompted that? By the way, I'm no fan of Mike. So, but I just hope that you could, if you can't maintain the high road to the very end, there's not much hope in my opinion.
I appreciate it. It's a fair criticism. Mike Khanna has been, after the campaign, very gracious. We've sat down. I have a lot of respect, as I mentioned in the beginning of the comments, for his public service, for his standing up for civil liberties, for a lot of his career. We had differences of opinion. It was a heated battle. He said things in the campaign that I'm sure he regrets. I'm sure there are pieces that we send out that I regret. I'm not perfect, but what I am committed to doing is healing this district, moving forward in a positive way, and having him play a constructive role. So I appreciate him take the criticism.
Okay, question over here.
Jake Donaldson, Santa Clara.
Hello, I'm Dr. Davis, and I'm from San Jose. I think the thing that prompted me to come today was because I have not heard anything about two forgotten issues, and the first one is mental health. What are your plans to address mental health? Secondly, I'm working with students right now who are asking me, are my parents going to be deported? What should I tell them as a psychologist? Thank you.
I appreciate both of those points, and I am very concerned about the issue of deportation, honestly. I am not as concerned about the future of America. I think 15 years from now, 20 years from now, our country's headed in a more perfect, more diverse, it's the most diverse class in Congress. We're headed in the right direction. What I am concerned is of the immediate now. I'm concerned that there are going to be hundreds of thousands of families that may be split up. I'm concerned about the Jeff Sessions as Attorney General and the enforcement of laws in a way that's inhumane. Of all the things in the administration that I'm most concerned about, it is going to be the treatment of some of the immigrants in our country. And I will speak out very, very strongly against it. I'm going to direct my district office to be there, to be an advocate, to be there 24/7 in terms of being responsive to people in our community who may face such a situation. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take the lawyers in this room. It's going to take the social activists in the room. It's going to take all of us to be vigilant and to understand that when it comes to this issue, there is an extremist mentality on the people who have been appointed. And they have been very blunt about what they are planning to do. And some of it is frightening. And I am going to be as strong as I possibly can be on that issue, and I need everyone's help And I want you to please bring it to my attention if there is a family in need, whether they're in my district or anywhere in the community. On the mental health issue, it's a huge issue. It's an issue that just doesn't affect, it affects the most affluent communities. I mean, I think in our district, some of the pressure on young people and their well-being is an extraordinary issue. I think there is also a lack of understanding about how much mental health is a health issue, and there's still a stigma around it. And I don't think the Affordable Care Act, as strong as it was, and as much as I personally supported it, I don't think it did enough for the coverage of mental health treatment. And I will work, there's actually a bipartisan effort that Newt Gingrich, of all people, and Patrick Kennedy have led on more funding for mental health services in the government, and I want to be part of supporting that type of effort.
Cairo, congratulations.
Thank you.
I wanted to bring up the issue of climate change. I think it's the most important simply because if there's no climate, there's no life on Earth, and other issues then would be insignificant. So what are we going to do about the person moving into the White House who says he doesn't believe it's real, even though it's scientifically, factually been verified many, many, many times?
Oh, you stumped me. I think we've got. I think there are two things we have to do. One, we've got to continue to bring a message of the scientific truth. And I saw this a very simple thing in a campaign. You know, it takes hundreds of times of repeating something before something starts to sink in. And we can't say it often enough about the basic facts that scientific consensus is we have 400 parts per million of carbon emission into the atmosphere. We've got to get that down to 260 to 270 parts per million. And if we don't do that, we're really putting our planet's health and survival at stake. There was Stephen Hawkins had a brilliant article recently, I don't know if anyone saw it, where he said that we have all the technology to destroy the planet, but not to escape the planet, that we can't just leave the Earth. And so we better figure out a way on how to make this sustainable. Let me tell you though, practically, politically, one of the things I think we need to do. Secretary Vilsack told Hillary Clinton time and again when she was in Iowa, don't speak about climate change, speak about biofuel jobs. And Secretary Clinton, and they were very principled, they said, no, we need to speak about climate change. Climate change is important. We have to have an element of pragmatism, that we've got to speak in ways that is going to appeal not just to our district, not just to California, but to the rest of the country. And somehow we have to have the economic message also, that the extraordinary opportunities in renewable energy, in biofuels and others of creating jobs to help fuel the economy is going to help not just deal with climate change, but it's also going to help deal with economic growth. And that's one way I'm hopeful we may be able to get bipartisan consensus. The other area is the military has taken some steps because they get that they want to be up front on the technology to deal with climate change. And I'm hoping through some of those mechanisms we may be able to get some area of bipartisan consensus.
I just want to say one thing. Coal burning is turning back the clock, and what you're promoting, for example, solar jobs in solar industry, creates more jobs wherever you are in the country.
I agree, and I think we have to lead with that jobs message. I think when we say climate change, it unfortunately, because of the media, some people just tune us out. And so maybe we have to get at this in a different way of saying, look, we're talking about the new industries and new jobs. And by the way, this is also going to help the planet.
Hey, Ro, good afternoon. This is Jelly here from Nepalese American community. If you recall, we started your Reach Out, community Reach Out from my own home.
I remember.
And we finally accomplished the goal. I really congratulate you, and I just, on behalf of Nepalese community, I would like to thank you. I hope in your coming days, you will have, in your team, will have your fair representation of the minority communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
One more question on this side, then we're going over there. There are a lot of people with questions.
Hi, my name is Anissa. I'm from Cupertino, and my question is, so since the election, hate crimes have been given more awareness, and so what's your solution? What are the steps you're going to take to decrease the number of hate crimes amongst minorities?
It is a huge issue. You know, one of the sad things about this presidential election is that even if some of the rhetoric doesn't become policy, there was a permission given to voice and engage in a type of rhetoric that we have never tolerated. You know, people make fun of political correctness. There's a good reason for some political correctness. I'd rather we have some political correctness if that means basic respect for other people. I have a cousin who was in a part of the country and was at a bar where he was watching the election results, and there was an African-American elderly woman who he saw a number of men just approach her and start berating and yelling at her, saying, you know, you're no longer, your voice no longer really matters, right? There's something in this election that happened that has empowered people to feel like saying that or acting that way is socially acceptable. And that if anything, it's bold and independent and not politically correct. And we have to rebuild almost the sense of community and decency and norms that are the bedrock of a decent society. I can't do that alone, but what I do know, and I do fundamentally believe, is that our district is actually really good at that. Our district is actually a really good model at that kind of respect and understanding. And I feel so privileged and so honored at this time of our country to be able to go to Congress from a district like this and share some of our values and how we live as what represents the best of America. So I will, of course, support the increased hate crimes legislation and prosecution of hate crimes. But let's be real, that's not going to solve this issue. We've got to have a new sense of understanding and compassion and empathy that we rebuild in this nation. And I think our district can help start that type of a movement.
We're taking 3 questions on this side. First, please state your name and city, please.
Hi, my name is Mimi, and congrats.
Thank you.
My question is about the fact that I'm a big believer in information, and I actually have a blog that pushes the media to do more actual reporting, because knowledge is power for the public, and the more information they have, the more they can specifically push on, you know, in the polls they're taking on their candidates and in their vote for voting for things that are real, and voicing their opinion for things that are really going to happen. So my question is about, you spoke about jobs of the future, and there's just a big gap in the election, the campaign, not with you specifically, but in the presidential election, on what jobs are going to be real and what we have to do to get it to be real, such that we don't have this emotional reaction and then deals like Carrier getting all the play when it's already being criticized for being impractical because it's too costly and etc. You know, it's not never going to be widespread. It's never going to work. That's most of the criticism I've heard. So what do you think the big areas of job investment are, and can you give numbers, I mean, for the country, not just Silicon Valley? And what is the best way to get that information out and to push on the media so it becomes real, that to get real jobs and real growth back, we have to invest, and we've got to do it in these industries because it's the future and there's more jobs and there's a cycle, and really be specific about getting all that out there so people just don't go for the quick solution that's not sustainable in the long run. This is a long question, I'm sorry, but
You have to run for office. I think that's great. I've been saying this. I think this was the problem in our campaign. I mean, let's not underestimate. I underestimated Trump throughout. But when Trump goes and stands up there and says, you know, Carrier's coming back, and I fought to bring your jobs back, those of us who read the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, we realize, okay, that's only 700 jobs and 1,300 jobs are still going to Mexico, and they're paying $500,000 per job, and that may not be sustainable. That's not how a lot of the country reads it. A lot of the country is saying, this guy's fighting to bring our jobs back, right? That's how he's messaging it. And let's not underestimate. The last thing we want to do is underestimate him. And so what we have to do is you're absolutely right, we've got to give an alternative vision. It's why I disagree with Tim Ryan. I saw Tim Ryan out there, and I like Tim Ryan. He challenged Nancy, which I didn't agree with, but and Tim Ryan is on Meet the Press saying, well, we got to figure out how we get the job of the backhoe, the person who runs the backhoe, how we get that job. And I'm saying, if we're going to be the party that says we're going to bring the old jobs back, they're going to vote for Trump. He's the one who's saying, I'm going to bring your old jobs back, and he's compelling. We've got to be the alternative. We've got to say, we're going to bring some of the new jobs that are actually sustainable to the rest of the country. Now, this means several things. It means, first, thinking about what those jobs are going to be in. Are they going to be in robotics? Are they going to be in artificial intelligence? Are they going to be in cybersecurity? Are they going to be in industries that require software? And Enrico Moretti, this is really an important point if you'll indulge me, a brilliant economist at Berkeley has pointed something out. For every one job that the innovation economy creates, it creates 4 jobs in service and construction in addition to it. So we have a country divided by geography. The places that have innovation clusters, like Silicon Valley, we have issues here, but we're doing fine compared to places where they don't have hope. And then when you get a politician going to Ohio saying, I'm going to give you job training to get a job in technology, they say that's a bunch of hogwash. I've heard that for the last 20 years. Those jobs aren't here. So when someone comes back and says, well, you know what, I'm going to beat up on the immigrants and beat up on China and get your jobs back, they say, well, for 20 years, this other stuff hasn't been working, so let's try this other path. I want to go to these tech companies, and I'm going to be very clear, they have to care about this country and start to think about expanding their footprint in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan. Someone said to me, Ro, you mean you're going to tell people to create jobs not in your district? I said, my job is to be a United States member of Congress, to care about this country first. I don't want to live in a divided country. I want to make sure that the opportunities we have, that a kid in Homestead has, that a kid in Pennsylvania has those opportunities too. And we have an obligation to figure out what the path of hope and opportunity in this innovation economy is going to be for people in the rest of this country. That's our highest, in my judgment, responsibility.
Just a reminder, if you do have cards, you can turn them into me, because at 2 o'clock we're going to go to cards with issues that haven't been covered yet, so that we can cover everything. Let me know.
Thank you. Please don't forget those question cards. If you have them, pass them on to Tom. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jesse Rodriguez, and I'm from Sunnyvale. So you ran on a fairly progressive platform, and I think this election has kind of emboldened a lot of us to wonder what can be done to further the progressive cause. So there are 2 questions. So the first is, like, what can we do as constituents to further this agenda? A lot of people wondering, okay, this is the first time I want to be active in politics. What can we do on a practical level? And the second is, considering that you're now part of a very outnumbered party in Congress and in the White House, like, what is your strategy going forward for the progressive agenda, considering you're part of the opposition now?
They're both great questions, and I hope that we will figure a way of channeling all the energy of the people who got involved in the progressive movement, this campaign, whether they were inspired by Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or whoever inspired them. I mean, the good news is a lot of the young folks in this country share a lot of the progressive ideals. So the country's future seems in that direction. And a lot of the issues that progressives campaigned on are in the polls have a lot of support, whether that's health care for all, whether that's making sure that college is affordable, whether that's making sure that we deal with the environmental disasters, whether it's standing up for human rights, whether it's infrastructure spending. So what I want to do is get your ideas and engage in the first 100 to 200 days about meet with progressive groups, figure out what the agenda that people care about, and then help not just be a one voice saying, okay, I'm going to take these ideas and introduce legislation, but say, you know what, if you really care about that issue, the person on Committee X, who's the ranking member of this, is the person you want to go and see. You know the secret of Congress is, it's actually pretty easy to go meet someone. It's actually pretty easy. If you really care, you'll get a meeting. You won't get a meeting with the president, but you'll get a meeting with probably almost any member of Congress. And a lot of it is figuring out who the right people are and figuring out how do we get some Republicans on some issue. It may be only 30% of what we want, but at least it moves the ball forward. And how can we get those small wins in moving things in the right direction? And of course, there'll be moments of great opposition. I mean, if something contradicts our basic values, and we all have to speak loudly. But what I believe, I fundamentally believe this, we're living through revolutionary times in the displacement that technology is causing, and the displacement that the global economy is causing, and the demographic changes. We've elected someone who I really admired, Barack Obama, but we elected him president after being 4 years in the Senate, and we've elected someone who's never held elected experience to lead the nation. Our politics are in such flux and volatility. And it's a time where being an American citizen matters. It matters. You know, it mattered in the Revolution, it mattered in the Civil War, it mattered in the Depression, it mattered in the Civil Rights Movement. Well, this is a time where it matters. It matters to stand up and be counted. And I'm so glad to see this kind of turnout, because I think people get it. So if there's one silver lining of this election, I think we're going to have a very engaged, active citizenry, and that's what's going to allow us to make sure that we don't have losses in the progressive movement and some of the values we share.
Hello, my name is Rohan. I'm from San Jose. So, in the campaign, you led a great movement of getting many youth involved in your campaign. And the day you got elected, there was a lot of enthusiasm in my school saying, oh, someone like you was elected. So my question is, now that you are in Congress, what kind of steps will you take to get more youth involved in politics and more community issues? Because there's a big gap in between them.
I appreciate that, and that's great to hear that kind of sentiment at your school. I was just talking to Sam Maturi about this. I want to make sure all the hundreds of students who were involved that we create a committee that will be engaged on some of the policy and ideas, and that I would meet with when I'm back in the district, and that can meet with my district director so that their concerns are heard. And some of them may be really simple concerns. Like at one of the schools, the DECA program didn't have the right authorization to be able to have DECA in a school that didn't have a teacher. And these kids went to the school board and they got that changed. And I had gone to a school board meeting and spoken out about it. And a lot of people just didn't know about the issue until the young folks brought it up. So I want to create these committees across the district, and we'll implement it in January and February, and now have an engagement that's not just about campaigning, but it's about figuring out the substance of how to have an impact.
Thank you. We're back here in the back. Oh, wait.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Rappner, and I live in Santa Clara. I'm actually a housing attorney at an organization that works throughout Santa Clara County and Fremont. And so my question to you is, what are you going to do to support not only affordable housing, but fair housing, including the HUD AFFH role? And I also just wanted to say that I'm a little concerned because we are not okay here. My clients are low income, they're disabled, they're single parents, they're immigrants, they are experiencing not only housing instability, but food insecurity, economic insecurity. They don't know where they're going to live, to sleep at night. And so I think that while it's important to look at the rest of the country and their opinion of us and how we're so far ahead, I think we need to remember that we're also a community funded. And that your job is to also look at this community and what you can do for us, not just the country as a whole.
I agree with that. I appreciate that very much. And I think, I've been very involved with the Sunnyvale Community Services Center and understand, even when you go and are bagging groceries and things, and you're shocked that there are 800 cars on a day in Sunnyvale that need help. And there are very few people who can afford to buy a house in this area or can afford rent. I mean, I have friends in their 40s who are basically, some of them making $70,000, $80,000 a year, which is a great salary anywhere else, who can't afford more than a studio and are sharing in their early 40s and aren't getting married in part because of the economics of the situation. So the cost of living, the homelessness. I mean, I don't know if Kathy Edwards was here earlier, and she could talk about some of the faith in action, the homeless problem that we face, the housing problem we face, the transportation problem we face. These are acute problems, and certainly my priority on a day-to-day basis is going to be to help people in our community deal with it. My district staff is going to be, the first priority is going to be, in my judgment, someone who is possibly going to be deported, to help them. They're not even voters, but they are the most vulnerable. The people who don't vote are actually the most vulnerable in society, because no one has an interest to care for them. But it's a congressperson's obligation to care. It's a congressperson's obligation to ultimately first to help the people who can't be helped themselves. And my office will, I will make that clear to my staff that if there is someone who comes with a fair housing issue, if there's someone who comes because they're facing concern of deportation, if there's someone who comes because they aren't being able to make ends meet, that is going to be our highest priority. And I will count on people like you to bring that to our attention. And if we're not being responsive, I'm going to be, one of the things that I campaigned on is we're going to have open town halls. We're not going to have scripted questions. And I'm going to want people on the microphone to do things like you did, to challenge me and to criticize me and to say you're wrong. And I'm going to continue to do that because that's what democracy is. And so if you see that our staff isn't doing that, come to one of my town halls and say, Ro, your staff isn't helping. That's why I'm going to be accountable to this community. But you can count on me as the first priority being to help those who are most vulnerable in our community. I don't view that as inconsistent with also inspiring and getting our community, which has some of the richest and most successful companies in the world, to also think about the opportunities they're creating in the rest of America and make sure we overcome a divided nation.
Hi Rob, my name is Shram and I'm from Cupertino. So this question is, regarding the topic of air pollution or climate change, especially with the current president-elect, who plans on boosting fossil fuel industries, how will you combat that issue, especially as in California with companies such as Tesla that are aiming for greener tech?
Well, I think Tesla is a great example of something that's aiming for cleaner technology, but we have to make it scalable. Now, I'm hopeful with the new model that they're releasing, which is going to be priced at around $40,000. It's still not affordable for most people. But the question is, how do we get some of the, having venture capitalists and Google executives driving Teslas is not going to solve the environment. We've got to figure out how do we scale these technologies and scale them in a way that is adopted by people that in a way that they can afford. And I think that's going to require government investment. It's going to require a great support for innovation and research. And this is where I'm concerned with the administration, because if they start to cut some of the funding in ARPA-E and National Science Foundation and National Institute of Health, where that funding should be quadrupled and not cut, that's a huge problem. And so I will continue to make the argument that those are things we need to invest in as a nation.
At 2 o'clock, we'll be getting questions from your cards. So here.
Well, let me just take a show of hands, because between the cards and the live thing, how many people want to continue the live questions? How many people want to go on the cards? All right, we'll do the cards then. All right.
Hi, I'm Sidarsh, and I'm a senior at Cupertino High School. So Santa Clara County actually has one of the highest average rent costs in the country and the state. So how will you try to address this issue, given that Housing Voucher Choice Program and rent assistance programs on a federal basis are underfunded?
You're absolutely right. I mean, the cost of living is in my judgment, one of the biggest issues facing us. I mean, the average cost in Sunnyvale, I know, is about $3,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. The average cost in Santa Clara is probably over $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. We need to make sure that some of the rental assistance is taking some account of the cost of living, because $50,000 here is very different than $50,000 in other parts of the country. And we've got to be funding those programs. And my fear is that some of those programs may be cut under this administration instead of increased funding. What I will do is I will make the argument that funding affordable housing for students and struggling entrepreneurs and middle-class workers is critical to a functioning economy. That this is not some kind of handout. This is what we need to have a strong ecosystem. And I will be a very strong advocate for those type of programs.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sumit Mishra. I'm a resident of Cupertino. Met you about 3 years ago at a conference. Been a huge fan since.
Thank you for being here.
My question is regarding community and law enforcement. Basically, there's a collaboration between the two, and there are times when law enforcement kind of goes a little further, and there are certain, if you were to say that there's a borderline between atrocity versus maintaining your peace and freedom of citizens, that kind of situation. I'm just wondering if you have any ideas or thoughts around how would you better enable law enforcement to have a more human approach towards enforcing the law.
I appreciate it. Well, we have to not have the militarization of police forces. I mean, policemen and women need to think of themselves first, in my judgment, as social and community leaders, and second, as resorting to force. And it's a lot about the training and the role that a police officer feels. The best police officers that I've seen are often have great relationships with their local deli, with the local Starbucks, with the local community, with the kids. They're seen as pillars of the community. There's not a sense of authority. Of course, they risk their lives every day to keep us safe, and there has to be a recognition of the danger they put themselves in. But there has to be a humility towards the way they conduct themselves, because ultimately they have extraordinary, anyone who is allowed to carry a weapon and shoot a weapon has extraordinary power. And that power means extraordinary responsibility and humbleness. And so I think we have to rethink how we view the role of a police officer and train the police in this country so that they're a part of the community and not just in a position of authority. And of course, this is going to be a challenge in this administration, but I will continue to advocate for that view, at least from our district.
Hi, my name is Joyce Lowy, and I come from Sunnyvale. And I've been way in the back of this line, so I haven't heard everything. So I do want to say that we shouldn't say that progressives are all young people, because the older I get, the more progressive I growing number of moderate Democrats. I'm not interested in moderate. Or Dems who are socially liberal but fiscally conservative, and they don't want to spend any money on us. We're at the bottom of the heap. And third, I've been to my city council a number of times to protest all the development in Sunnyvale. And I believe you were saying that some of these companies should have been directed out of state. Nevada is empty. and they were greedy and took it all here, and as a consequence, we can't leave our house after 3 in the afternoon. However, I do want to say not only is the country divided, the Dems are divided, you know, and you're losing them to independence because I don't consider myself a Dem anymore. I don't like what's being done. And I want to say with the jobs that you mentioned, the new jobs, the tech jobs, the jobs of the future, I hope that you don't abandon the democratic values of the past. And one of those would be regulation. Regulation. And if we had better regulation, perhaps the Oakland fire wouldn't have happened on Friday night with in excess of maybe 40 kids dead. And let me see here. And as an old person, as a retired person, I predicated my retirement. Actually, I didn't retire. I was laid off in 2009 from an 18-year job at Stanford because of this economic recession, quote unquote, a depression. Sunnyvale was empty during those years. And I just lost my train of thought. Hang on one second. So I predicated my retirement after I got laid off on these insurances that were promised to me that I paid into. They please don't use the word entitlements. They are earned benefits. Anybody who works pays into them. So I don't like, and just like the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, should have never picked up the moniker Obamacare. These are earned benefits. And I would like to see the cap raised on the Social Security tax so that the Social Security, for those of you who don't know it, stops at about $110,000. And anything you earn above that, the Social Security tax is not levied. So take it off, tax all income, and we'll be flush until $3,000. No problem. Last thing. And what the other guy didn't bring up is the voucherization of Medicare. Beware of that. The government may offer you a voucher of $5,000, $6,000, and your private insurance that you're going to wind up having to buy could be $30,000. You're going to be bankrupt, and I don't want to be bankrupt and out in the street. Thank you. I will take your answer.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I certainly, didn't want to imply by saying a lot of young folks are progressive, the inverse, that people are, our greatest Bernie Sanders, our greatest, some of our greatest progressive leaders, or I don't think it has anything to do with age. They're people that have values. And you'll be pleased to know I joined the Progressive Caucus in Congress, and that the Progressive Caucus supports the Social Security, scrapping the cap for those making over $250,000. We believe that you cannot in any way accept the privatization of Medicare, that we need to make sure that Social Security benefits that have been earned are paid back. And I think these are values that there can be no compromise on. And certainly I will speak about these traditional democratic values and stand up strongly for those values, as I believe this district will expect, because I'm ultimately representing a district that I believe cares deeply about these values. But I also think we, in addition to that, have to talk about some of the jobs issues and making sure that those jobs are created, and some of them will be union jobs and good paying jobs. So I think that the challenge is going to be both. But I appreciate your passion, and certainly I'm proud to be a progressive Democrat, not just in name, but you'll soon see in the way I vote and the positions I take.
Our last question for this round, and then we're going to go to the question cards.
Congressman, my name is Nasima Akudi. I live in Sunnyvale. I've always thought of Republicans as street fighters, and they think that they're in the street instead of the Congress. And us Democrats, we tend to be an inclusive, civil, polite bunch. And we've always, whenever we've been in a position of minority in the Congress, we've always worked with the president, and I've always supported that position. This time, I think it's a little different, at least for me, and I'm hoping for a representative who do to our president-elect and our next future president what the Republicans did to Barack Obama in the past 8 years. If it has to come to opposition, I'm hoping that you're just back, like real opposition. Not that anything stability and working, and all, it's fine and it's great and I love that. But this time I think it's a little different. They are truly trying to erode our constitutional rights. I mean, they're fighting with the Constitution, not with the Democrats. What's your thoughts on that?
I appreciate that. I will say, you know, I mean, I think Nancy Pelosi, for all, I think she is a fighter. I think she opposed George Bush's efforts to privatize Social Security. She stood her ground. Anything that I've heard so far in the leadership is there's no plan to compromise on any efforts to privatize Medicare or the voucher plan. Certainly when it comes to civil liberties and civil rights, there will be no compromise with an administration that is violating our basic values. I think the one difference between Democrats and Republicans is I'm not going to be motivated, and I don't think many Democrats are, with the saying that everything we do is for the political gain of the party. That's how the Republicans said, I want to make Barack Obama one-term president. So if Donald Trump were to say, I want to have universal single-payer health care, I'll vote for it. The point is, though, I will vote for those things that are consistent with our values. I am not going to compromise our values in trying to find civility or common ground. But what we will look for is what is going to be consistent with our values. Unfortunately, so far, there's not much that they've proposed that is consistent with our values, so I do think a lot of it will be oppositional. But it should be substantive opposition. Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. I take the long view of history. Maybe it didn't work this election, but in the long run, that's what this country needs. That's what the right way of being Americans are. And there are things more important as they are than winning elections. It's defining who we are as a nation. And I think Michelle Obama spoke the truth to that, and I still think that ought to be the motto for our party.
So now we're going to take a few of the questions that you all so patiently are waiting for from your cards. Leanne has the first question.
This question is from Rashid, an 8-year-old.
Wow.
What will you do about homeless that stand outside?
Roger, that's an incredibly astute and empathetic question for an 8-year-old. Where is he in the audience? That's very thoughtful of you to care. Some of the people in our own community could learn something for you when one of the tech leaders described homelessness as an eyesore in a recent article. And we have to just have a far greater empathy to the people in our community who are being left behind. And some of these homeless folks are not typical people just with mental health issues or veterans. A lot of them are, we're all one step away in this community from not being able to afford a place here. If you don't have family and you don't have friends and you get laid off and you've got a mortgage that's over $2,000, $3,000, it's hard to live here. And one of the things, I was on the board of this group called Faith in Action. I saw Kathy Edwards here earlier, I don't think she's left, and they work with 17 religious institutions, faith institutions, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, to help provide for homeless men a comprehensive program where it's not just shelter, but it's getting them back up on their feet, helping them get employment, helping them reintegrate into the community. And I think we need those type of integrated approaches and funding for that. So it's not just about providing shelter, it's about helping people reintegrate and become part of society.
We have a number of questions on electoral reform. Could you comment on your choice of any of these? Gerrymandering, campaign finance, hacking of the vote, term limits, and keeping one's business in a blind trust. Not my questions.
Although I think California is a model for a lot of this stuff. I mean, we did citizen redistricting. I think that is terrific. You know, Florida has recently enacted judge-ordered districts, and we picked up a few Democratic seats there. Not that it was favoring Democrats, but it just was a fair redistricting system. If we had fair redistricting around this country, the Democrats would be a governing majority. We don't. One of the biggest challenges is state by state, we need to figure out how do we get redistricting reform. I think has to be one of the highest priorities of reform. On campaign finance, as I made a pledge, I don't take PAC money and lobbyist money. When I got to Congress, they said, are you really planning on keeping the pledge? I said, yes, I am. I'm one of 3 members of Congress that doesn't do that, John Sarbanes and Jared Polis being the others. We're hoping to start a caucus saying, don't take PAC and lobbyist money. We need to figure out how we overturn Citizens United, but how we get less of the PAC and lobbyist money into politics. It's term limits, and this is a place where I disagree honestly with some of the people in my own party. I think the way California does it, where you're there, you have enough longevity, and then you're out, makes sense. Thomas Jefferson said people ought to live under the laws that they make. This quaint idea that you go, you serve, you come back. Well, people say, oh yeah, but we have elections and that's the ultimate way of taking people out. Let me tell you, as someone who's run for 4 years against an incumbent, the odds are so stacked against you. That's just political rhetoric. 96% of incumbents win re-election. I was telling my father-in-law, I said, you picked a tough career and so much uncertainty. I said, yeah, well, now the odds are a little more for me than they were last time. But the point is that we have to change this. I said we have to change it when I was a candidate. I'm saying we have to change it as an incumbent. These were not designed to be lifetime estates. They were designed to be people's trust, and then you come and do something else. And so I support some version of term limits. And let the electoral vote hacking.
Vote hacking, yes.
Obviously I'm concerned about the hacking of our system and our electoral integrity. But let me say something in a little bit of a provocative and a blunt way. If the lesson that we take away from this election is, oh, the election was rigged, or the election was hacked, or that there was too much money, or that there was unfair articles on Facebook or Twitter, we are in trouble. There was a collective cry from parts of this country saying that their elites have let them down, that they don't feel part of this nation, that they don't feel like the system and the economy is working for them. And I've always believed, even when I lost campaigns, that the best thing you can do is learn from where you failed, be honest about your weaknesses, and then build instead of blaming external forces. I think we have to take a very hard look at why so many people in this country, this election cycle, rebelled and rejected the governing class. And we need to be really thoughtful, and that to me is the real priority for the nation, more than just dealing with hacking and others, which we have to. It's how are we going to have a governing vision that's going to connect with people who have lost really trust in our governing class.
This is about the Newbie Island landfill expansion, which affects residents in Fremont, Milpitas, and San Jose. We know that you have given that group tremendous support in the past. They'd like to ask, can you be at the San Jose City Council meeting on December 7th to request a comprehensive environmental impact report before the permit is issued?
Nothing like public lobbying. I'm happy to, I have an orientation from December 6th through December 8th, so I won't be in town. I'll be in Boston. They teach us about how to, a lot of subject matter experts. But I'm happy to write a letter of support on that, and whoever gave that question, you can email me, and I'm happy to write a letter supporting it.
We have a number of questions on strategies, and you've addressed some of these already in the quoting Michelle Obama, saying that we stay high when they go low. But would you like to share some of your strategies about working as a member of the minority party, working with third-party political organizations to bring change? We have other questions about voting for the minority leader. Who would you vote for DNC chief? Some of those political questions on strategies, if you will.
Right. I see our Assembly Member, Kansan Chu, and his wife have come in. Thank you for joining us. And I will just take a brief moment and then I'll answer that question. Several folks that I'd asked about the swearing in for a member of Congress on January 3rd is done collectively in DC, and you only get 2 people, 2 tickets. My wife gets to go, and one of my parents are figuring out which one of them are going to go. But when we come back, Kansan has been gracious enough to do a ceremonial swearing in the district, and we'll invite folks for that. So thank you, Kansan, for that. So on some of these political questions, we need to open up. I think one of the messages across the spectrum in this election, from the local election, from my election, to the election of Bernie Sanders, to the election of Donald Trump, I think one of the messages were we got to acknowledge that politics in this country was too cliquish, that there were the in-groups and the out-groups. Let's be honest, even in this county, there were groups of people who had formed networks that didn't allow new voices, and people felt that the system was rigged, that they were not getting their voice heard at every level of government. Third parties felt that way, challengers felt that way, people who weren't part of the system felt that way. I think that was one of the biggest overriding sentiments of change. It's why candidates who had family members and others who had been in the governing class, that actually became a liability rather than a positive. So I do think we have to go and open up our political process. I mean, respecting third-party candidacies, we're one of the only countries where there's actually just 2 parties. It's remarkable. In a country of 300 million people, that you have 435 members of Congress, they all happen to be Democrats or Republicans. I mean, we need more people need to feel like they can have a voice. And I appreciate these questions, because I think these are the hardest, the questions that we need to grapple with this election system. People felt so angry at the sense that their voice was not being heard, that they weren't being respected, that they sort of didn't matter. One of the reasons, and there's a brilliant book, I forget the professor, who went and surveyed rural America, and they asked them, why is it that you're not for more government programs? I tend to believe, I told my staff this when we were running, I tend to believe voters are really smart on average. I had no tolerance for anyone who ever said, oh, the voters are stupid. I said, no, that's our campaign is stupid. We just haven't figured out how to communicate with them. So when a lot of people in parts of the country are voting a certain way, I think one of the most arrogant things we can say is, oh, they just don't understand their own interests. No, there's something else going on. Well, this professor said one of the reasons they're not voting for more government spending is they actually think that government spending isn't coming to them, that they feel so disconnected by the government institutions that they feel like those decisions are happening and they have no impact in those decisions. so they don't think that they want to support that type of spending. So we need to rethink why so many people are feeling disenfranchised in our country. And how do we open up that system to give them a voice, whether that's more parties, whether that's campaign finance reform, whether that's a fairer process. All of those things are on the table, and frankly, those aren't partisan issues.
What's your view on Iran deal, pleasing the Iran regime by not addressing the outrageous violation of human rights in Iran?
Well, it has to be a balance. I probably disagree with the questioner, and from the tone of the question, that it seems like they oppose the deal, and I was publicly for the deal. That said, there have been numerous efforts in making sure that we get to a peaceful solution and that we respect human rights, and that's regardless of the country. But I'm happy to discuss that afterwards, or the person can come to my office and we can go into a greater detail, but we probably respectfully disagree on that.
As you know, Congressman, many groups are feeling disenfranchised by the results of the elections. One group in particular that we have a couple of questions from is the LGBT community. So one of the questions that we had is, given the Republican-controlled Congress and White House, how do you plan to protect the LGBT community and expand rights towards this community, including anti-discrimination in hiring? They are not yet a protected class.
You're absolutely right. They need to be a protected class. They haven't been. Part of that's the Supreme Court jurisprudence, and it's of concern to me who's going to be on the Supreme Court. I think that's one of the biggest concerns in terms of the evolution of that law and discriminatory law. I will say this, that I think there has been a greater embrace. I met a young person, a Navy SEAL. One of the great things about orientation is you get to meet members of Congress from all parties, from all parts of life. The 38-year-old guy, I was sitting down drinking coffee in the lobby. He came up, he's cursing up a storm. He says every person in the Navy does that. I didn't know, but he was this Navy SEAL. And he says, look, a very impressive guy, the Republican district. He said, I don't care, I'm for gay rights, I'm for equality. That's not why I'm in Congress. So what I don't know, and I'm going to find out, is some of the new generation of Republicans who have been elected from conservative districts. My hope is some of them on this issue have realized that this is the right thing to do. And if I could get, frankly, if I could get him to co-sponsor a bill on LGBT rights and protecting against discrimination, that's going to go a much longer way than if I got Anna Eshoo to co-sponsor the bill. So I'm going to look for some Republican colleagues who have the credibility with their own party to help advance that issue.
You have answered a few questions on airplane noise that's affecting Cupertino and Sunnyvale communities. They would like to request a meeting with you separately to discuss future actions.
Absolutely. I think someone asked about that earlier, and I'm very committed to doing that meeting. Give me till January 10th to get my team up, and then that week when I'm back, I'm happy to do meetings with the district staff who can follow up.
I think we have time for one more question. This is a broader question. What about your commitment to improving opportunities for women in leadership, and it applies to both public office as well as within the Fortune 500?
Well, I appreciate that question, and I think there were many reasons I was disappointed about the election, but one of the reasons I was disappointed is that Hillary Clinton, I do think, represented something remarkable for women and their place in political life. And her not winning that election is a setback, in that it's not obvious when we're going to see now a woman president, a female president. I'm hopeful it'll happen sooner rather than later. 2020? All right, hopefully. But, you know, that means that there is a greater, a great responsibility in politics to make sure that we are encouraging the women to participate at all levels. I am sensitive to this as someone who is a son of immigrants who came from a ethnic community that wasn't represented at all in Congress until a couple terms ago, as to the barriers that people face. But I'm also, and I'm sensitive in the tech world, that they're not represented in the executive suites, and that we need greater diversity and greater leadership. But let me end with this. You know, I know it's easy for many of the people in this room who were disappointed by the election results to think, well, what does this mean for the country? But when I think about that issue, I think about the fact that this nation elected an African American with a middle name that was Muslim twice for the presidency, that it elected a woman to almost be the President of the United States, who got the most popular votes, that an Indian American born of immigrants, proud of being of Hindu faith, can represent a district with less than 1% of a population that's of Hindu faith, that we have the most diverse class in Congress ever in the history of this country. If progress was simple, and if you never had backlash or you never had setbacks, a lot of great things would never have been achieved. Obviously, when you have huge change, you're going to have moments of brushback, you're going to have moments of setbacks. But the larger trajectory of this country is in the right direction. And this room, this district, is part of that. And so I'm so excited that people have not disengaged from the process, as this room shows. They're energetic, they're excited, and I'm collectively very, very excited about my first term in Congress and working with all of you to help make an impact for our country. That's why we all work so hard to get to this point. Thank you.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, so I'm gonna look. Probably going somewhere, yeah. I didn't hear it, but we're coming on the floor. You get your first girl. I read it. Okay, retrace your steps. You want?